All right, now we're talking about part 2, or actually in our project it's part 4, and this tutorial is going to show you how to create some graphical displays to show whether or not there's an association between two categorical variables. You're first told to organize the data from the two categorical variables using a two-way table, and then to create an appropriate graph using percentages. Show the fraction work for each of the percentages, and then to write a clear, concise report that addresses whether an association exists between the two variables. Use statistics to justify your findings. Okay, so we're going to go back into our Excel spreadsheet. This is the same spreadsheet that I used for the other part, where we were creating the histogram, and you can see down at the bottom I've got these other sheets. So sheet 7 still has the number of AP classes for male students. Sheet 6 still has the number of AP classes for female students. I'm not going to actually delete these sheets just in case I decide that I want to go back later and make some adjustments. I'll leave them there, and that way we don't have to start all over again. But if I go back to my original spreadsheet, which is sheet 1, this has all my data. What I'm going to do is, for my two categorical variables, I'm going to look at gender versus favorite type of food to see if there's an association between gender and favorite type of food. And what I think will be easier is if I can kind of see these two columns right next to each other. So if I right click on D and E, whoops, let me highlight them first. Okay, so I just regular clicked and highlighted both columns. And now if I right click, I can actually hide those two columns. And that way my gender and food type are right next to each other. The next thing I think that would be helpful for me is to sort my data so that I think it would probably be easier to sort it by the food type. So I'm going to go ahead and again highlight all my columns. Let me move this little thing down here. I'm going to highlight all my columns, and then I'm going to go to where it says data, and then you've got this little sort icon. I'm going to go to sort, and then I can determine how I want everything to be sorted. So this time, and notice that I have two sort requirements. So I can delete one of them just by clicking on it and hitting delete level. So the first thing I want to sort by would be favorite food type. So favorite type of food. And then I do want to kind of sort by gender. I think it would be easier if my males and females were next to each other. So I'm going to add a level and then sort by gender. And I'm going to hit OK. All right, and so what I'm asked to do next is to create a two-way table. So I'm going to just go ahead and put, let's see. Okay, so you can see what I did is I just started to create a 2x2, or I guess in this case it's going to be a 4x2 table where I have my favorite type of food as my column variable and gender as my row variable. And so now that everything's kind of in order for me, I'm just going to count. So I'm looking for the number of females that prefer American cuisine. So that would be 2. There are 2 that do that. And then there's only 1 male. With Asian, there's 1 female that prefers Asian, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 males. When it comes to Italian, we've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 females. And let's see, 4 males. And then with Mexican, we've got 2 females and 3 males. All right, so there's my my two-way table. If you wanted to then transport this to a Word document, you might want to just add some borders, for example. So if I highlight the inside of the table, for example, if I go to, let's see, I think Home will have, and underneath the font, if you click that little menu, you can actually do all your borders this way. Now on the assignment though, it says actually to use percentages. So let me show you how to quickly find the percentages. So let's first add up all the females in my study. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to click and highlight all of the numbers, and I'm going to go beyond my table one cell, and I'm going to hit auto sum, and that'll add everybody up for me. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the males and do auto sum. I can also do the same thing for the totals, like for American cuisine. I can do the same thing with Asian. I can do the same thing with Italian. And I can do the same thing with Mexican. The other thing that I want to just pay attention to is note up at the top where it talks about the number and it just is highlighted as like a general term. That means that anything can go in the cells. Since we want to change these to percentages, it's going to be better if we highlight all of those numbers and actually click that drop down menu and change it so that it actually says number. Because sometimes if you like try to type in like 2 divided by 12, it'll think that it's February 2012 or something like that, or February 2nd or February 12th. So it helps to kind of change that back to a number. I would include the decimal places here because now we want to change everything to a percentage. So I'm just going to physically do that. So I know that there were 12 total females, so I'm going to do 2 divided by 12, and then this is going to be 1 divided by 12, 7 divided by 12, 2 divided by 12. And notice that that adds up to 100%. Do the same thing for the males. This time it'll be 1 divided by 13, 5 divided by 13, 4 divided by 13, and 3 divided by 13. And again, that should add up to 100%. So the first thing I might want to consider would be how gender is compared to the favorite food. So if let me try this. Let's not include the totals for the favorite foods, but just the 2 rows that have the male and the female data. If I now go into insert into like either a column or a bar graph, it doesn't really matter which one you do, I'm going to do a side by side because I personally do not like the stacked bar graphs. I think they're really hard to interpret. So I'm going to do a side by side. Okay, and so if we do it this way, I am then comparing each type of cuisine and then the percentage of males and females that prefer the different types. And oh, I see. I actually highlighted the ones and I shouldn't have highlighted the 100%. So let me try this again. In fact, let me actually just delete that column. There we go. So if I delete that data, notice how it just automatically adjusted my graph. So that's perfect. You can see that we have our key right here that tells us the difference between males and females. If you're going to be printing this out on black and white paper, you might want to consider, or I'm sorry, on white paper and printing it out in black and white ink, you might want to consider changing the colors of your bars simply because it might be hard to see. So for example, these blue bars, if I just click on one of the blue bars, let me click out for a second. If I click on one of the blue bars, it'll highlight all of them. And I'm just going to right click and it'll show, let's see, where it says format data series. I think this might be where I can, let me see, fill. If we go to solid fill, notice that it changes the color to gray. So I could change it maybe to a darker gray or to a lighter gray. And then if I close it, I think those 2 colors are going to have more contrast and you'll be able to see the difference a little bit better. The other thing we want to do is label our axes and give this graph a title. So for the title, if you go to format, I'm sorry, maybe not format, maybe layout, sorry. Okay, so if you go to layout, you'll notice that there are a bunch of different icons at the top of the page. So for example, there's one that says chart title. So if I want to have a title, I might want to put it centered and overlay like right here. And if I click in there, I can say favorite food versus gender. And then I already have the favorite foods listed along my x-axis, and since this is a bar graph, I don't have to worry about the fact that there are spaces between the bars. It's just the histogram that we're not supposed to have any spaces between. My vertical axis, though, is going to be the percentage of males and females. So I'm going to give this axis a title as well. So I think you go to axis titles. I want to do the vertical axis and I want it to be rotated. And so I'm going to write percentage here. Whoops, I spelled it wrong. Percentage. And this would be the percentage of each gender. Okay, so if I press enter, that gives me my title or my label for my other axes. Okay, and so I think it's pretty clear when you're comparing this graph, since the height of the bars for American and the height of the bars for Asian and the height of the bars for Italian and Mexican, they're very clearly different. I can see that there's definitely an association between gender and favorite food. So for example, like most females tend to prefer the Italian, whereas most of the males, or a larger percentage of males, tends to prefer Asian food. Okay, so if I wanted to then, pull all this stuff and put it back into a Word document, for example, I'm going to click on the graph. I can right click on it and then just hit copy. I can go to my Word document. So this is where I had everything before. I might want to insert another page and just say, this is part 4. And actually just a reminder, when you're pasting, it's a good idea to paste special and paste it as a picture. And that way, changes that you make to the spreadsheet won't affect your graphic. But there's your graphic. You also should include your two-way table. So data on favorite food for each gender. And I do expect you to write all these explanations out. It's not, your project isn't just about copying and pasting the graphs to this document. I'm just showing you how to do the graphs. I'm not going to help you fill out the paper or fill out the questions. You should be able to do that at this point. But if you go to your spreadsheet, I don't actually need to include these percentages down here because they're not part of the data that I was collecting, or they're not part of the percentages that I was finding. So this was 1%. This is 1%. I just want to make sure that it's clear that this is the percentage. And notice how when I added those values back that it changed the graph in Excel, but if I go to my Word document, it didn't change my Word document. If I hadn't pasted this as a picture, it would have changed the graph in my Word document. And that can be really, really frustrating because then you have to go back and fix it. All right, so if I'm back in my Excel document, so I just want to make sure that it's clear that these percentages have to do with all these numbers are the percentage of females that prefer American, Asian, Italian, and Mexican. So if I just highlight that portion of the table, I can go to Cut, and then if I go into my Word document, and in this case too, I don't know if the option, yeah, you can, let's see, I've never pasted it as a picture, but let's see if it works. It works. So there's your table. And you can make it a little bit more fancy if you want to change the font or change the colors. Feel free to go crazy. That's fine. You could also have examined this data a different way. So for example, let's go back to the counts again. So we had, I think, 2 females that preferred American and 1 male. For Asian, we had 1, 2, 3, 4. We had 1 female that preferred Asian, and then 5 males. And then for Italian, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's 7 females. And notice how my graph just keeps changing and changing. And then Italian, we had 3 males. And then for Mexican, we had 2 females and 3 males. Okay, that's so play paste. So this time I'm going to add my sum this way. And I actually had already done that, but because we could actually create a different graph analyzing the same information. So this time I'm going to look at the percentage of those who choose American food, the percentage that are female versus the percentage that are male. So this would be 2/3. This would be 1/3. For Asian, it would be 1/6 and 5/6. For Italian, we'd have 7/10 and 3/10. And for Mexican, we'd have 2/5 and 3/5. Okay. And so this time, we actually want to look at this a different way. So if I do a new one, I think it'll change the graph. I think it'll change the way it'll look. And that's not what I wanted to do. Okay, so this graph is a little bit different. This is now showing, like, of all of the people that like American food, almost 70% are female, and the other percentage obviously are male. So each pair of bars is going to add up to 100%. That's not really what we want to do. So what we can do here, if I'm clicking on it, there's actually an icon up here, a little data option that says switch row and column, and I believe that will do it for you. So now we can look at all of the distribution of the foods by gender this way. I don't know really which is more beneficial. I think the way we did it in the first place probably makes a little bit more sense in terms of comparing the genders, although I think this works too. And you might even be able to do it side by side if we changed the plot type. Let me see. If we go to column, I don't know if that helps. Anyway, so that would be a different way of doing it. So I just wanted to show you different ways of creating a bar graph from two of your categorical datas, or two of your categorical variables.